was your hammer. And as you can see, this has spikes on it. So you would say, why do you have spikes? Why would you call that a hammer? Well, if you had a flat surface hammer, and as you can see, my armor is rounded. And if you take a flat surface and you hit a flat surface, it's just going to glide off. It's not going to do a lot of damage. However, with these spikes, as soon as it hit the armor, it would bite into it, it would create little dents, and all of that pressure, all of that energy would be transferred, and hopefully it would stun the knight underneath the armor long enough so that the other person can defeat him. The axe, if you would, you know that technique where you come in and you grab my leg? If you would perform that, just slowly, using the axe blade. The axe blade's a sharp weapon. So if my foot was forward and he came forward, what he could do in essence is use that axe blade, if you'll turn that way, he could hook the metal itself and pull it up. And that's what the axe blade was mostly effective for. Bernadette basically closed the door. Now, if I had this long pole axe, and we were fighting, and we met in the middle, and I came here, at this point, if I've made this mistake, the idea of choice would be to go over his head and wrench him backwards. But say I came here, and at this point, there's nothing I can really do. But what I can do is drop my pole axe and grab my dagger and go straight forward. So the pole axe was the first choice for a knight on foot. The cataphract had been around for hundreds of years in Islam. All of those countries of Eurasia, further away from Europe, they had this armored horse and heavily armored warrior on horseback using long spears. And they would primarily use heavy cavalry. Now what I mean by heavy cavalry is shock tactics. Because if you two individuals would come up, any two of y'all, it doesn't matter. Okay, now for instance, if you'll hand me your sword, and you stand right there. You stand right there. Now, if I'm one person, and let's say they got 3 people. Now if I am charging fast strikes and make a lot of noise, and I can scare them and make them turn around, I can stab them in the back, I can cut them down, and it's a lot easier, even though my numbers are fewer. So heavy cavalry was basically shock tactics. So they would charge forth their armored horses, their armored soldiers upon the enemy, make them scatter, and then chase them down and kill them. This cataphract was around for becoming a knight. How do you think you would become a knight? No idea, right? Would you like to volunteer? No? You could volunteer, sure. And I told you I would call on you. And let's see. And you. Okay. Now, you want to volunteer? Alright. So, during this period, women were not just household ladies. They could become knights. Women were given very much authority. They were not looked as lowly as they did in the 18th, 19th century when all that kind of ideas in society came around. In medieval history, women had a very influential role as well. So if she was a young lady, and let's have you, and then let's have you two guys. So you can come over here, and you stand with her. Good. And you stand right here, and face them. And then you stand at the end, please. Yay. Alright, so when somebody was a kid growing up to be 8, 9, or 10 years old, up to that point, how old are you? 10? And how old are you? And you? Okay, then we set them up very appropriately. So at the age of being a child, grown up to be about 10 years old, a person would be a page. And a page helped in a house. So they would do laundry, they would cook, they would clean, they would take care of animals, they would do normal household things. Now once they got to be about 11 or 12, they started to become a nuisance around the house, right? Started causing a lot of trouble, a lot of mayhem, did things they shouldn't. So the women of the house didn't want to take care of them so much. So normally what happened, if I was a knight and I did not have enough money to fund a squire, to fund my son to become a knight, what I would do is I would send him to another house. a knight that was a relative, an uncle, a cousin, or perhaps just a knight that I knew could financially afford to take care of him. Then under that knight's house, they would train them from about 11 or 12 up. They would train them how to fight with the longsword, how to fight with the dagger, getting into the 14th, 15th century, how to fight with a poleaxe, how to ride horses, how to use the lance. They would be trained in war and combat for a minimum of at least about 8 years or more. Then, well, rather as a squire, they would also fill other roles. They would take care of the horses. They would learn how to clean the knight's armor. Armor certainly rusts. It's metal, so it gets old. It gets beaten. So it rusts, it develops, you need to take care of it. It has so first was a page, then was a squire, and then when you got old enough, about his height, then you got a Thank you for that. All right. So what about the expenses of a knight? Does anybody here have any guess, roughly, how much it costs an individual to retain the title of knight yearly? Just any guess?
$1,000.
Higher.
$5,000.
Higher. Yes?
20 million.
Oh. Good.
40,000.
How much?
40,000.
Getting closer.
50,000.
Closer.
75,000.
Closer.
100,000.
Thereabouts. Yes? How much?
150,000.
150,000? Yeah.
130,000.
When we start getting to accounts, if we really try to take the value of what was around back then and apply it to today, we can never actually come to a 100% accurate assumption of how much it costs. It just doesn't equate. It's like saying the value of a cow back then equals the value of a cow today. It just isn't always the same. But even if we take the most absurd figure and we bring that figure down a lot, we start looking right about around the range of $100,000 to $150,000 to be a knight per year. Not yes.
So the currency of today, not the currency back in 1890s, 1990s?
Right, they used a different currency system
Much older than
over in Europe. But they didn't use the euro. It was called something different. I just totally slips my mind right now.
How did a knight earn that kind of money to be able to afford that?
Well, he had land, so his land basically got him the startup fee. Basically, to be able to get that suit of armor, to get the horse. But then once he started going to battle, then he could profit off of battle. You see, a knight would not want to kill another knight. That was the furthest thing from their mind. If I was signified as a knight, which surprisingly, my armor does not make me a knight. Nothing I am wearing right now makes me a knight. It simply makes me a man-at-arms or a soldier on the battlefield. What a knight could profit from, the way he made his money was going to battle, doing warfare, and upon identifying another knight, if he could best him, if he could knock him unconscious, if he could take him hostage somehow, and the other knight yielded to that knight, he could take him prisoner. He could take him hostage. And as his hostage, he would have his squires run over, take the armor off the individual, tie him up, hold him hostage, send word back to where that knight was from, and say, look, give me X amount of dollars or else I'm going to kill him. And that's how knights really made their money, was by ransoming other knights.
Is it a hand signal? You're saying that looking at you right now, no one would know that you were a knight.
Right.
Well, how would one knight identify, the ransom? I mean, it seems that
They usually had plumes by their armor. They had depictions. They would wear a surcoat that would have their colors, that would show they would have an emblem. They would have heraldry. Usually if they had a shield, they had a painted on heraldry, so it showed the family lineage that they were from. A knight